It's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Hello, YouTube. Hello, TikTok. It is a beautiful day here in the sunny south, and we should have a fun talk in store today, although I'm almost already regretting the topic, as I certainly am on my other channel. I I can't tell you how often I get these crazy people who leave their incoherent nonsense mixed in with insults in the comment section on my post, and then I block them rather than respond. Then they get insulted that I blocked them, and they track me down on my other social media accounts to let me know how I can't possibly be the critical thinking guy because you blocked my post. And they can't self-perceive to know enough that perhaps I didn't block them for a lack of critical thinking. I blocked them because they're unhinged maniacs who stalk people across multiple social media accounts. But nonetheless, that comes with the territory, and when you build a social media account and you have 150, 160, 170,000 followers, well, you're going to get a lot of that, especially when you talk about some of the things that I talk about. And one of the things I talk about a lot is propaganda. And I made a video on one of my channels today, which really just talked about the history of propaganda. I was thinking of it in the context of everything going on in the world right now with that big event, that big conflict that they can't stop talking about now that their last thing of propaganda has ran its course and people realize that was nonsense. They won't admit it, but they realized the last thing was nonsense, so now they're just on to the next one. And they're like, you get the non-player characters, and they're like, whatever the screen tells me to think is what I will think. So I made a post, and basically it talked about World War I propaganda. And I included a screenshot of an actual advertisement that was taken out by the German government at that time. And a lot of people don't know this, but the German government, prior to the sinking of the Lusitania, actually took out an ad. And it said that ships in this specific area, where the Lusitania goes, that are serving the purpose of the war effort against Germany at that time are going to be shot down. This is World War I, not II. Right? It said they're going to be shot down. And they had tried to... Hello, Mila. They tried to spread that information as far as they could, but a funny thing happened, and this was later revealed in a congressional investigation years later. I've tracked down the actual the minutes from that congressional testimony. But what happened was, as Germany tried to warn the public that they were going to shoot down naval vessels in that area, J.P. Morgan, the man, actually J.P. Morgan Jr., I should say, someone on my post said, how can that be accurate? J.P. Morgan died the year you said this happened. No, J.P. Morgan Jr., he had his people research influential newspapers, and he wound up purchasing 25 of the most widely spread newspapers in an effort to prevent the German government from warning the American people that they would shoot down these ships. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that fascinating? So, J.P. Morgan's successful with that. And yeah, way to go, Junior. So J.P. Morgan's successful with that. J.P. Morgan Jr. And the Lusitania gets shot down. Now, of course, the Lusitania, the reason the German government shot down the Lusitania leading up to World War I is not because they were trying to commit an act of horror against the American populace, but because the Lusitania was actually carrying war armaments. So, if you put this in the perspective of another government, I mean, imagine America was in this conflict, right? Your neighbors are in your front yard, trench warfare, fighting this brutal, brutal war. And, you find out that Germany was actually shipping weaponry across the ocean to the people you're fighting the war with so that they could kill your neighbor, right? That's what was happening. You have to, the Black Mirror, you have to look from their perspective. So, Germany, I mean, what do you think? Do you think they were right to shoot down the ship? I know what I would do if they were shipping weapons to my country to have my neighbors killed, and myself, and my wife, and my children. So they shoot down the Lusitania, which is carrying these armaments. And then those same newspapers that J.P. Morgan got his hands on, and, you know, all the newspapers all over America, remember the Lusitania, we need revenge for the Lusitania, look what they did to our countrymen, they shot down American ships, right? So, you know, then the public, they eat that stuff up, especially at that time. They just, this type of war propaganda. Anyway, it became a machine, but they start pumping out all this propaganda. Then the American public, which was largely against what's been called the Great War, as if any war could be great, but was largely against this war, they were outraged, right? You get the outrage, and the American public got behind the war. And then one of the things I did in that post is, bother me, I did in that post is I actually pictures of real propaganda of that age and the way that they depicted the Hun, right? They branded the Germans the Hun, right? They said they're the Hun. Defeat the Hun, right? To defeat the Hun. Yeah, you guys get it. So they branded them the Hun, and they depicted them as these big gorillas, right? And it's a real lesson in dehumanization, that any time that the powers that be, anytime the media, anytime the government, whoever it might be, wants you to target a population, whether that be for war, whether that be for taking away their rights, whether that be for political reasons, they start this dehumanization process in which they want you to view your fellow man, and often they do this your fellow countrymen, right? I mean, they would tell you to look at me because of this, and they'd say, oh, look how bad he is, right? Right? It's dehumanization. So they started this dehumanization process of the Germans, right? They started depicting them as gorillas, and so they depict them as gorillas, and you know, before you know it, yeah, right, that's absolutely correct. It's easier. They're trying to prep the population that it's okay to, you know, those people, and it takes dehumanization to do that because we as human beings, we are naturally against that type of behavior. I know people might not think so, but it's actually, believe it or not, it's hard to get someone to say, here's your weapon, go out there and take out that person you've never met, right? You got to separate them from that's a person with a wife and a child and a mother and a father, right? It's bad, okay? Yeah. Yes, it is. So, they started depicting the Germans as the Hun, right? And the guerrillas. And then, of course, all this propaganda of them carrying the bodies of deceased women, of children hiding behind moms, and the Hun with a shadow coming for them, right? So it's this propaganda that they're less than human, that they're coming for the women, they're coming for the children, right? This is the type of propaganda they use to get people to do horrible things to one another, things that are reprehensible, the things that happen in war, right? So the dehumanization process, and then I also posted real propaganda that was used of the white feather campaign. And for those of you not familiar, in Britain, what they actually did is they started a campaign where if you didn't volunteer to go to the war, that you were masculine. And what they did is they actually conditioned the women of Britain, and they passed them out to take these white feathers. And any man that had not yet enlisted, they would put a white feather on him in an attempt to humiliate and emasculate the men of Britain, to shame them into joining the war effort, right? Yeah, that's some powerful stuff, right, Melissa? So these are the methods of propaganda. And the reason I made this post on my other channel, which I'm almost regretting already because it's at like 30 like, no, you're wrong, and this all incoherent nonsense, and then it just changes my algorithm so that I have to deal with those people for months at a time. What we didn't learn in public school, yes. Then I have to deal with these people for long periods of time. It messes with my algorithm. It's not the people I want. Like, I want homeschool people. I want homesteaders, homeschool people. These are very high consciousness people, right? Yeah, people can't just talk anymore. They just yell at each other, and I'm going to say it louder, and I'm going to call you a term. Oh. And I go down these holes of these people who are obsessed with their politics and yelling at the screen, and but anyway, I have to kind of walk that line because, propaganda is kind of what I do, right? I mean, I'm a history teacher. It's what I do. So anyway, I walked that line. So it's at like 30,000 views right now, and I'm kind of just hoping it just... I've almost considered deleting it, which I know sounds wild, but... Right, God forbid people disagree and still be cordial with each other. I say that all the time about the trolls that come to this channel. I was like, you could just come here and not like what I'm saying and keep on going, but instead they just have to call me a bunch of names. And like, from my perspective, when you see just how incoherent these people are, it's like, oh, I could make it private. You're right, I could make it private. So that's an option that I could do as well, because I had that video that I did on the peanut trap, which I started the video with like the first 3 seconds, and I was like, how to warn your children the dangers of socialism, and it got 1.2 million views, and that account has still not recovered. I already posted on Pinterest today. Yes, there are exclusive videos exclusive to Pinterest. I posted one today. I'm just doing a whole series, homeschool getting started. I was in a rush, and then right before I posted the video, I realized I had a piece of fuzz, white fuzz, right here on my face, the whole video. And I was like, I could refilm it, and I was like, nah, I'm just going to post it. So anyway, I posted a Pinterest video that's awesome, but I have a piece of white fuzz just on my face. But whatever, I really don't care. So, don't mind the kids in the back. Oh yeah, you can probably hear Brady and Aubrey screaming over there. It's a beautiful day in the sunny South. The children are hanging out in the yard. I can see Nicole. She's hanging with them. She's absolutely crushing. All right. So anyway, the reason I made that post this morning, because I posted about what I'm thinking about. And I was thinking about the history of World War I propaganda, because tomorrow in my class that I teach every Thursday, Foundations of Propaganda, we're actually going to be going over with the children actual World War I posters, actual World War I propaganda, as well as propaganda from the Spanish-American War. So anyway, that's what I was doing. I woke up at about 4 in the morning. And for about 3.5 hours, I was working on putting that lesson plan together. And so then right after I did that, usually I wake up at 4 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I switch. Sometimes I stay up till 3, sometimes I wake at 3. But anyway, that's my sleeping schedule. But usually when I wake up at 3, hey Martian, usually when I wake up at 3, what I'll do is make my videos, and then I'll post them at like 8 a.m. But this morning I was working on the propaganda class, so that's what we're learning tomorrow about. I teach Foundations of Propaganda, and we're going to go over that historical propaganda. Gunter in the house, something that I'm so passionate about. Yeah, Gunter, I'm going to get back to you. I just had to jump on this stream, and then I have a 2 o'clock appointment of something I have to do, so hopefully later today I'll get back to you, or if not, tomorrow. I try to answer everyone in the homeschool community within 24 hours, but give me some leadway. Hey, Eric, how you doing? Give me some leadway, because I get a tremendous amount of inquiries, so I get back to everyone, but sometimes it just takes me a little bit of time to do that. So yeah, we've been doing the Foundations of Propaganda class. I've been using the Cubs to Bears children book series. It's been a massive success. We did on the Right to Bear Arms book, we taught children how to identify or to familiarize them with how social shame is used against people to get them to voluntarily surrender their rights. Like, oh my God, you won't cover your face in the grocery store. It's because you're just so selfish because you don't care about grandma. You're so selfish. You're so selfish. Meanwhile, the people who are saying that are the most selfish people on the planet, right? Right. And in reality, it's like it takes tremendous amount of courage to go against that type of societal social pressure because you're strong in your convictions, because you believe in individual liberty, because you believe in the God-given rights that were endowed upon us, not only by birth, but were encoded in our laws with the United States Constitution, right? People think I was going to surrender those rights, that I was going to back down because they could hit me with a little bit of social shame. You got something coming. I am the descendant of greats. I am the descendant of people that value liberty. Okay? My father went to war because he valued freedom. Now, there might have been a spell around that he might have been tricked a little bit into going. But the point is, he was willing to risk life and limb to stand up for liberty and freedom. My grandfather went to war. My grandfather fought in World War II, willing to risk life and limb. He bought a samurai sword home. My parents still have it in their house. Right? He's willing to do that, and these people aren't willing to go into a grocery store without their face covered because, God forbid, you got faced with a little bit of social shame. And people say, oh, we're the land of the free and the home of the brave. Well, we stopped being the home of the brave, and that's why we're not the land of the free. These people got on ships, travel 3 months with a 40% chance. Hi, I can see a couple of chats. With a 45 or 40% chance or something like that they would perish on the ship. And they came across to a world with no infrastructure, no food, no supply chains, no security, hostile populations that wanted them gone, right? And they did that because they valued liberty, right? And then we come into this world and these pathetic people, but lots of taxes. You know, the no taxation without representation, that was over you ready for this? Oh, I got to do a video on that. Okay. That was over a 3% tax. The American Revolution, no taxation without representation, was over a 3% tax. Now, why did they throw the T? Why the T? And the T tax, but why the T tax? Why? Because the British East India Company, didn't like that their tea interests, they were a very, very powerful corporation, and they didn't like that their tea interests were being threatened by the colonists, right? They didn't like that. So they said to old King George, they said, you better do something about that, King. Because when the king doesn't follow the corporate powers, anyway, it's always a game, right? So the colonists appropriated some culture, and they dressed up as the natives, and they snuck onto the ship, and they threw the tea off the ship. Back when men were men. So anyway, I'm getting the lesson ready. So tomorrow we're teaching Foundations of Propaganda. Continuing that lesson, we've done the social shame lesson with the right to bear arms, free speech, social media censorship, and the First Amendment. Oh, I said the bad word. And the First Amendment, false flag, there are still a few. Oh, they're all the time. They make it very hard to talk about these things, but if you pay attention enough, they fabricate these events all the time. A lot of money. I mean, you know, during the so-called war on horror, thoughts on American state national status correction, I think you better be good at it. I think you better dot your I's and cross your T's, because I know people that do things that I won't even talk about on this, that you would think are unheard of, that people are like, you can't do that. Like, no, I know them and they do that. Like, anyway. And I've talked to them about what they do and how to do it, and they they're friends of mine and they walk me through it. But I don't even try, because if you slip up at all, well, you're going to get the full weight of Uncle Sam on you, and you better know what you're doing if you want to do that. So, like, a lot of people will jump into that and think it's a good idea. Like, those people, there was a big movement toward the type of sovereignty we're talking about right now, in like the 80s and the 90s, and they had a lot of success with that stuff. And then there was one loophole, one thing that a bunch of them missed, like a bunch of these guys that were living completely free, and they made one mistake, and the government came down on them, and a bunch of them spent a lot of time in a cell thinking about that mistake. So if you want to do that, do it, but you better be careful with what you're doing, because to me, I'm just more biblical with it. I'll give Caesar his Caesars. I don't care. Uncle Sam wants to come and smack me around and take some of my income, that's fine. I'll pay that. It's a protection racket. That's what it is, right? It's no different than the mob, right? When the mob shows up at like the local baker's restaurant, right? The bakery, and he's like, hey, I heard there's these guys that want to rob you, I heard they're a threat to your bakery. They want to burn it down. But hey, you pay us a monthly fee. We'll make sure that those guys don't do that to your bakery, huh? And then, like, if you don't pay them, sure enough, what happens to your bakery, right? Forget about it. Hey, forget about it. You just pay me my monthly fee. I'll protect your bakery, right? Well, that's the government, right? That's the federal government, and that's fine. Like, I'll pay that protection racket. I don't feel like fighting the mob that way. Like, I'll pay that protection racket. But it is what it is. Everyone has to make their choice. And, like, if you want to go that route, there's like solutions empowerment, considering it. Yeah, but you better be careful, Wednesday's Child. I mean, I root for you, but yeah. I mean, I'd rather. Yeah, right. I'd rather pay the mob. At least they're honest. Right. At least the mob's probably more upfront than the government. And people don't realize that the government is just organized crime that's become so powerful that they've encoded their power into law. Now, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm not an anarchist either. Like, people will come with, you got to be an anarchist. Oh, really? You want Walmart to have an army? What do you think? You get rid of government, that the power dynamics go away? If we're an anarchist, all I have to do is be a little bit stronger than you. That's all I have to do. Right? So you think, those power dynamics go away. I don't know what you're watching in this world, but the government it's your greatest enemy and it's your greatest ally all at the same time. And, like, I don't want the whole world to be under the terms and conditions of Twitter, right? Like, I could at least in public, like, I could go to government buildings and I could say things that I can't say on Twitter. I'll tell you that right now, right? If everything's under the terms and conditions of Mark Zuckerberg, right? Well, that's the world you're getting with anarchy, right? Like, everyone's so against, like, the terrible thing that happens with young people and being moved across borders and whatnot. Just gotta be careful with my terminology. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like, Hillary Clinton in the sewers and, all that stuff, right? Like, those really creepy people that like to have their pizza parties. People that like to talk about Podesta, the Podesta email type people, right? Well, how do you stop that with, how do you stop that with anarchy, right? How do you stop that? Do it. Right? You'll get the people that are like, yeah, everything is consent based. Where's the consent stop? Right? You don't think they could get all these people to consent to things? Like, anyway, it's hard to talk about it on platforms like this, but there's such holes in these ideologies that's like, I know people are passionate about them, and that's why, like, I think it's so funny because, like, I'm constantly accused. Oh, so you're an anarchist? Oh, so you're a libertarian? Oh, so you're a conservative? Like, no, I believe in morality. Like, that's the only thing that could solve. Like, even when I made the Peanut Trap video about the socialism, right? Like, oh, like you get all these socialists and like, oh, so why don't you talk about how bad capitalism is? Like, I talk about how bad capitalism is all the time. Just because I talked about socialism being bad doesn't mean I said capitalism great. And like, you'll get the capitalist people, right? You'll get the capitalist people, and they'll come along and they'll be like, they'll talk about like socialism and they'll mock it. They'll be like, oh, so that's not real socialism, right? That's not real socialism, right? Oh yeah, that wasn't real socialism, right? And like they're right in that critique of socialism, right? Like socialism is, anyway, it's a disaster, but you can't then turn around and say that America's not real capitalism. Like, America's real capitalism. Like, America's what happens with capitalism. It winds up, what happens is you get these mega corporations, these Rockefeller types, who become ultra, ultra, ultra powerful. They create monopolies. There might be some pushback against the monopolies. Maybe it's organic, maybe it's not. They then leverage their money to start buying off politicians, to purchase newspapers, to start shifting culture. Then they get their power encoded into law, and through their power, they start pushing more socialist agendas because it serves their power. So you say, oh, but that's not capitalism. That's socialism. No, yes, it is. It's both. It is real capitalism, because the inevitable result of these morally bankrupt people getting all this money is they're going to leverage their money to manipulate culture, to run psychological operations on the public who has no idea what they're looking at, to buy newspapers, to buy politicians, right? And then they're going to push their agendas, which will tend to be more socialistic, because that gives them more control over society and what they're trying to do, right? Rockefeller, the ultimate capitalist, right? His famous quote, competition is a sin. No, his life is a sin. His life is a sin. So when people are like, oh, what system is the best? I'll tell you what system is the best. Morality. Morality is the best system. People who just do what's right because it's the right thing to do. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not kill. Right? Love thy neighbor. Do not covet thy neighbor's wife. Right? Like that's the system. So like, you're like, oh, what political ideology are you? All these political ideologies are flawed. I mean, there's some strengths to all of them, but the truth is that only morality can improve society. And like, yeah, I mean, I lean toward a more capitalistic mindset because by its nature, it's more freedom. Like when you get into socialistic stuff, then you're just saying outright, like, no, the mob should be able to come and take all our stuff and beat us with batons, right? I mean, so the capitalistic mindset is like, yes, that is more freedom-based, but ultimately, like, what happened in the United States, that is real capitalism. Like, and yes, there are some real flaws to it. So I think it's so funny when I get all these socialist clowns, and like, why don't you talk about, like, I talk about capitalism all the time. What do you think? Every day I talk about these corporations. I write books on these corporations. I make videos about these corporations. I mean, what do they think? That's not capitalism? Of course that's capitalism. Anyway, I digress. I have to keep the TV off, such bull. Yeah, I haven't watched the news in like, I don't know exactly, but I think like 2 years. Something like that. Hello, Wednesday's child. Yeah, don't try the sovereignty stuff unless you really, really know what you're doing. Just trust me on that. If you want to do it, then really, really study it. Like solutions empowerment. There's a few other ones. Wednesday's child, you're in the Discord. You're in Homeschools Connected. If you look on the left side menu, there's a category called Know Your Rights. And I actually have links to all of those sovereignty movements. Know what you're doing. Yeah, forced consent is not consent. Absolutely. Right, we're not a capitalist country anymore. We're corporatist. That's right. But that's capitalism. And like what does that mean, right? What that means is when you have a capitalist system, and don't get me wrong, like I'm a capitalist, but when you have a capitalist system, you're inevitably going to get these powerful factions, right? Like you're going to get the Rockefellers, you're going to get the Carnegies, right? These massive titans of industry. You're going to get Bill Gates, right? And then what they're going to do is, because they have all this money, right? They're going to use their money to buy the politicians and to manipulate culture. And then they're going to turn culture more socialistic because that serves the powers that be at the top, right? So what's happened in America, which is really like corporatist, it's really fascistic. It's a fascistic system. Is capitalism ultimately evolves into some kind of Frankenstein blend between fascism, socialism, and that thing they did in the Soviet Union, but I try not to use that word on here for obvious reasons. But so like that's how it plays out. That's the cycle of it. So like it's always a fight. It will never not be a fight. It is worth fighting for. Freedom is worth defending, and a big part of freedom is economic freedom and property freedom. Like if you don't have property rights, you don't have rights. So like, you know, and property rights, by the way, they've tried to erode our property rights so much that they've tried to take away our property rights over our own bodies. That's what the last 2 years have been about. So like, you know, there's nothing wrong with defending capitalism. Like I defend capitalism, but we should also all have the awareness of the flaws within that system and understand that we will always be in a cultural war against the flaws in that system being waged by big money interest at the top. And that's just unavoidable in a system that, if it wasn't corrupted by immorality, would really be true freedom. But that's what we're dealing with. Show me a form of governance that works for 100% of the population, and I'll show you a lie. Yeah, absolutely. Right, government didn't even work for God. God had a revolution against his government. So, and that's like, even when like people, that's like I talk about the anarchists, people are like, oh, get rid of government. When you have like 3 people in a room and you ask what's for dinner, now you have a government. You have a government. What are we going to do? And so it starts. So it's like, you can't avoid government. They say, oh, well, I could just get what I want for dinner. Okay, well, now the third guy in the room just decided he wanted your dinner. Oh, well, you can't have it. Well, he just decided that he's holding a baseball bat and he could have it. What? He can't do that. Why? It's your anarchy. Why? I'm not seeing the chat. I see you, Martian man. Yeah, corporatism is the loophole of capitalism. And like, Ryan, socialism isn't even inherently bad. It just needs to be voluntary. For example, you want your church to be voluntary socialist. Right, like, I'm a voluntary socialist, right? Like, voluntary socialism, you're right. You're absolutely right. Socialism is fine if it's not the government coming in and forcibly taking your stuff. Like, if you're like, hey, I grew a lot of food and now I want to feed my neighbors and I'm just doing that out of the goodness of my heart, well, that's great, right? But as soon as the government comes in and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to beat you with a baton unless and lock you in a cell, well, then it's inherently corrupted, right? It's inherently corrupt. And that's the problem with that system. That system is inherently violent, inherently corrupt. Yeah, I mean, I'd like people to learn from our history, but the truth is that most people don't even know, like, they don't even have the slightest idea of our history. And our history is so convoluted. Like, I'll talk to you guys like I'm a history guy, but our history is so convoluted. Like, I don't know how much of it I actually understand. Like, I'm constantly learning, it's the history is written by the victors, and they have distorted our history to such a degree that it's it's really beyond the pale. But all we could do is keep an open mind and keep learning and taking in information, and we use our discernment and use the knowledge we have to make the best decisions we can. And outside of that, it is what it is. So, and that's why like people like they focus on. That's why I'm like, oh, I don't want these political people on my chat. Like, you focus on like that stuff too much, it's not good. Like, you need to focus on building, starting businesses, and right, hiring your friends and being a good neighbor and getting married and having children and homeschooling your children and raising them with morality, raising them right. And like, that's the stuff that people should really be passionate about, should really be doing. And unfortunately, there's not enough of that in the world. So sadly, that's so true. Public school failed us, and now they want to stop us from teaching our kids the truth. Yeah, well, good thing is they can't stop us. So, you guys are here, and you guys are a bunch of homeschool legends. I absolutely love it. I teach my kids there's always light in the darkness. In fact, there's usually not even like that much darkness. Like, once you turn off the screen, like, the world's beautiful. Like, I live in an area where there's none of the like facial covering nonsense. It's really nice here. And because I don't watch the screens, like, that whole situation has been over to me for so long. Like, I moved here in July, and that situation has basically been over since July. Like, there's none of that here. I just live my life. I don't really care about that stuff going on in Europe, Asia, yeah, I'll post about it. Like, that's what I do. I teach about propaganda, but you turn off the screen and you realize this world is beautiful. I'm literally looking at my son rolling around, my daughter crawling after him, my beautiful wife laying out, and like, life is great. The sun is shining. Television, yuck. Absolutely. Yeah, life is great. It's a beautiful day in the sunny South. I got some errands to run with my family after. Like, I'm running a homeschool company. We're teaching children their rights. We're teaching them to identify propaganda. We are, as a community, reviewing strategies. We're teaching them financial literacy. We're teaching them skills, art, photography, videography, gardening, planting, composting, building greenhouses, growing their own food. We're getting them entrepreneurial experience. The students in our community, every day I'm inboxing with the members of my community on different strategies they can use to get their children entrepreneurial experience. So, we're teaching the skills of freedom and liberty, and we're raising them with morality and just letting them enjoy their letting them, that an ant? Nah, you got to go. Get out of here. You guys might not understand the problem with ants in the South, but in the South, you'll understand the problems of ants. These guys are monsters. Bunch of terrorists. I might start a propaganda campaign against fire ants because I didn't draw first blood, okay? I got here to the South. I was innocently minding my own business, playing with my son, and I looked down, and there were like 50 ants on my leg, and then my leg was on fire the rest of the day. And I don't like fire ants. I don't like them. Get away. Come up on my stream. Get out of here. I gotta watch where I put my daughter down because it's like a disaster. If you accidentally put your daughter down in a fire anthill, disaster. And like they're all over the place. They run out. Yeah, they're ruthless, and they run out like you touch their little hill and just thousands of them. It's unbelievable. They just sprint out and they don't like come out like, oh hey, who's there? They come out blitzkrieg. They come out swinging. Be a good socialist and share your wealth with the ants. Yeah, exactly. The ants are socialists, and they come out and they're like, "Give me your leg. I'm gonna eat it." Right? Share your leg, and they just start biting my leg. They got my son. We were flying kites out in this big field, and he had what are they called? Not a sandal. Anyway, I forget, but basically a sandal. So he had a sandal on, a croc. He had a croc on, and he stepped in one of those anthill, and there were like 20 of them on his leg instantly, and he started running. Ah! And I ran up to him, and I got the ants off his leg, and he was like, "Oh man, that burns," in his own words, and I was like, "Yeah, you got to be careful of these anthills." So now he knows. He looks very carefully. He makes sure that he doesn't step on any of the anthills. But yeah, I mean, one second you're flying a kite in an open field, and the next second you're under, World War II blitzkrieg style attack. So yeah, these ants are just an absolute disaster. I don't like them. There's no love lost between me and the ants. Like, I like mosquitoes more than these ants. And the mosquitoes, these southern mosquitoes, for those of you that don't know, are treacherous beings. They are treacherous. They hunt in groups of hundreds, and you can't escape them. You're outside, and it's like every second there's another mosquito landing on you, and like they don't just want a little blood. They try to suck you dry, and you're like, and like, pros and cons of living in the South. The pro is it's February, and it is phenomenal out here. Dale Bill in the house. Oh, Dale Bill in the house. But in spite of that, I must say, the South is an absolutely splendid. I think it's 70-something degrees out here today. It is just spectacular. So if you have someone who I've been trying to convince to come and live with me, this is exactly where you want to be. Don't mind the ants. I'll flick them. I'll make them go away. There's nothing to fear. It's fine. If anything, be more worried about the snakes. Oh, no, or the alligators. I get that. Ooh, you heard that? The mosquitoes are even worse in Florida. So if you're a person I'm trying to convince to move here, just know that the mosquitoes are even worse in Florida. And I hear that they're genetically modified, so who knows what old Bill Gates is doing with them, you don't want those Florida mosquitoes. I'll tell you that right now. They'll come at you. They're relentless. And the fire ants are probably even bigger in Florida. Hey, Tiff Gog. We need a commune or RV caravan. Listen, I tried to hook you up with one of the members of our community, so hopefully you guys could connect. But they're RVing across America. And, so I think RVing is a great way to live. No debt. You could travel the country. It's a great way to homeschool. You could visit all type of historical sites. Nah, Marine Princess, Georgia sucks. Georgia sucks. That's another person. Another person I allegedly could have been trying to get to move to where I live. But, yeah, I do that whole voluntary commune thing, so. That voluntary socialist thing. It's a whole different ballgame. Ooh, when we build our houses, we're going to add a hookups for RVs. That's awesome. I have been RVing for 3 years, and now I'm settling down. Melissa, your name in Homeschools Connected is RVing Across America, right? I believe that's correct. Believe that's correct. If that's the case, I tagged you in a post right before this. Everyone has different names. I'm missing Yes. Okay. Yes, I am correct. I just tagged you on a post. Tagged you in a post on Homeschools Connected right before this. We have a new member of our community who is thinking about getting an RV and homeschooling and traveling across America. So I figured I'd tag you in a post with that person, and you guys could chat about whatever. I'm trying to do more with Homeschools Connected, where I find groups of people who have children that are the same age, that are studying the same type of things or learning in the same way, and getting groups created for you so that you guys can start bouncing ideas off each other and kind of empowering one another in how to educate the children. One of the things I did yesterday is I have 3 members now of my of Homeschools Connected, with 11 to 12-year-old girls who are really interested in sewing and are doing entrepreneurial things with making clothing. So I created a category yesterday, clothing design, and put a discussion area, and I tagged all 3 of those families in that. And my hope is that they'll follow my lead. Why would you follow my lead? Follow my lead and start collaborating with one another, and you can really do a great job of say, hey, I tried this, it worked. I tried this, it didn't work. Hey, I found this new curriculum. We did this at the farmer's market. We were doing this with a website, a really cool idea, and like bounce all these ideas off each other so that you can really benefit each other in terms of what you're doing within the homeschool community. So yeah, really think that's a good idea. So, all right, I don't want to take too long because we got stuff. You want a shower? You smell fine. I don't even smell you from here, just from closer. I only smell you from She's across the yard. But seriously, you really want a shower? So we got to be there soon. Okay. I like the way you smell. I don't know. What do I know? What do I know? I'm just a bear in the woods who likes freedom too much. All right, guys, if any enjoy homeschool community, that's Homeschools Connected at www.classicallearner.com. You could join with the promotion code MARINE. We're gonna do North, but we're selling in June and moving there. Yeah, I'm one of the things I'm really excited about with the homeschool community is I'm starting to see a lot of people who are like, oh wow, because we have state groups, and in every state, like if you're in Ohio, you could connect with people in Ohio. If you're in Louisiana, you could connect with people in Louisiana, and but the country's big, and we have enough members now where a lot of people in our state groups are starting to say, oh, wow, you're right near me. And people are actually starting to plan meetups. Like they're starting to have those type of conversations. So my long-term goal here is for us to have enough members. And I think when we get to like 1,000 members, it should be there, where we could actually have Homeschools Connected co-ops all throughout the country in which members of Homeschools Connected could actually educate their children together, and can really bounce ideas off each other. It's the same concept I just said with the sewing thing, with the 3 families who have 11, 12-year-old girls who are doing sewing and clothing design. Like, we as parents can empower one another, and I named our platform Homeschools Connected. That was the idea behind it. Like, we could all come together and we can do amazing things. So www.classicallearner.com, Homeschools Connected, promo code MARINE, $10 a month, all lowercase, that's MARINE. And yeah, you could find me, Classical Learner, on basically anything, anywhere you're looking for me. So that's what's up. I have some errands that need to be ran, and I'll be back tomorrow at 12 noon to report on how the propaganda class went. Every Thursday at 10:30 a.m. we teach the propaganda class. So that's it. Freedom isn't free. We have to earn it every day. And I will undoubtedly be back tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. To earn it,